everybody, and welcome back to session 2 of Elevate Conference 2020. In this session, we're chatting to Joel Wood from Lighthouse Church in Parker, Colorado, who is a great friend of Alive Youth and YA and would have been one of our guest speakers at conference this year. We got him on Zoom and had a chat to him about some of the fearful times he's had in his life and how he overcame them. Go ahead, jump into the comments. Our team are there waiting to have a chat to you. We'll see you after this. Hey everybody, welcome to this section of Elevate Conference this week. We are here with our good friend Joel Wood. Do you want to introduce yourself, Joel?
Yeah, my name's Joel Wood. I'm excited to be here at Elevate. Well, kind of here. I'm in Colorado, but I'm excited to be kind of with you guys today. I am the lead pastor at Lighthouse Church in Parker, Colorado. We're right outside Denver, and excited to see what God is going to do in you guys and through you guys this weekend.
Right, so obviously we were supposed to have you physically here for Elevate this year, which is sad, but anyways, we'll have to Trojan on and float it till next year. But can you tell us about the last time you were in Ireland then, for people who don't know you?
So I was trying to think of what year was the last time I was in Ireland. I think it was like 2015 or 2016. It's been like 5 or 6 years since I've been. And now I'm saying that out loud, and I know you're probably gonna like judge me because you're like, "Yo, you should come visit," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." But we want to, right? We've been talking up Ireland a lot in our church, and there's a whole bunch of people here who want to come and experience Ireland. So I guess the last time we were here, I was there. I was with a group of guys, and we were doing construction. I think that's when Jeffrey and I built the backdrop on the stage. And I think that was like, we had very little expertise in carpentry, and so we did that while the other guys did like the big difficult things. I think I painted the kids' room.
Yeah, it still looks good, so that's a testament to that work.
Hey, yeah, really, we built it to span the passage of time.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, obviously then, because it's been so long, you've had like lots of different life changes. I know we were talking about that the other day, but what have you experienced since then?
Yeah, so the last time I was here, I was serving, or last time I was there, or here, whoever's watching this, you were watching this in Ireland. I was working at Beltway Park in Abilene. I know one of you guys who y'all do a lot of stuff with. And I was working with Jeffrey, who's my best friend. You know, we were doing student ministry together. And since then, I have now moved twice. I moved to Atlanta to work at a church in an adult ministries position. And now I'm a lead pastor at a church in Parker, Colorado, which is right outside Denver, where the Broncos play football. And it's snowy and there's mountains, kind of like those, but real mountains. And they're just that way. I see them every day when I drive to work.
Nice.
So now I'm a lead pastor in Colorado. Still, have a great relationship with the guys at Beltway Park. Kind of our what we consider our home church. But now have the opportunity to serve the people here.
That's so fun. And what about like teenagers and young people at your church? What does that look like?
Yeah, so that's actually really exciting right now. When we got here, we made some decisions, and we didn't have the level of student ministry that we wanted. And but obviously, because I worked so long in student ministry, it was a big part of my heart. And so last year, we had this big vision night where everyone got together in our church and we prayed and we asked God to give us vision and clarity for the next year. And one of the things that we saw was that we felt this vision for student ministry. But we didn't have a student pastor. We really didn't have the ability to have a student pastor. And so, in our prayers, it's God, we feel like you want us to have this, but we don't have this pathway. You're going to have to do this. And I think like 2 months later, we had a student pastor on staff that like we didn't see coming, and in a pathway that makes no sense. But now we have a student ministry pastor who actually really engaged our students at the beginning and then grew our group over the pandemic. So they've been meeting on Zoom, and we've been growing since we've been on Zoom. They're meeting in person now in a house. And it's just great. And we're starting to see young people really just understand and work out who Jesus is to them and what it means to find their identity in Jesus. And it's crazy that God gave us the vision and gave us the means to walk through the vision that he gave us.
That's so cool. And even like lockdown should cause that to, you know, suffer in a way, but it's just
right.
Yeah, it's just been overflow for you guys at the minute, which is very cool. I like it a lot. And so okay, so basically what we're talking about in Elevate this weekend, and I know that you would have been talking about it had you have bit like if you were here, but we were talking about fears. So basically I want to know what's your irrational fear? What keeps
snakes.
you
Oh my gosh. Snakes are the worst. Y'all don't have snakes in Ireland, right?
St. Patrick got him out.
Right. St. Patrick got him out. That's why Ireland's my favorite country. I am terrified of snakes. I live in a place where there are rattlesnakes. And like even like in the Rocky Mountains, there's rattlesnakes. You think, oh, it's cold up there. And when it's cold, they hide. When it's not cold, they come out. And like when I go to the zoo, I will not go like the reptile house because that's where the snakes are. My kids are like, let's go look at the snakes. And I'm like, no. There's a guy in my church that constantly sends me snake videos. And I'm like, I don't want to see that.
Your friend. So just rattlesnakes or snakes in general? Just
any snake. In fact, there's a quote. I think it was my second Sunday where I'm at right now. I'm preaching, and I'm talking about my irrational fear for snakes. And I say the phrase, "Every snake has killed every person always," which, you know, I can't prove it scientifically since other people are still alive. But like, it seemed to make sense at the time. Like, I'm terrified of snakes.
So you're not going to like, go on holidays and have the big Britney Spears one moment.
I just want to hide right now.
Keep that in mind, like a snake skin something or other. That'd be fun. A little fun present.
That would be a terrible present.
My irrational fear is like, have you ever seen the Count of Monte Cristo, the film?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you know when he's like wrapped in this, like the cement blocks and thrown into the ocean just to drown, sink and drown.
Yes.
That would be mine. So that's my big irrational fear. But
is being weighted down with cement shoes.
Yes.
And thrown into into a deep water.
It's just a nightmare. It's not worth thinking of.
Do you like swimming in the ocean in general then, or like you're just afraid it's going to pull you down?
Beach. No, I like the beach and everything, but just the thought of drowning and not being able to do anything about it freaks me out. It's a control thing.
Yeah, it's over quick though.
Is it though? It sounds painful. Okay, all right. So snakes, I'll keep it in mind. Okay, and so since obviously, like the last time you were here, probably some people were in the womb still. The last time you were here, it's been that long, it feels like, but
it hasn't been that long.
What?
I mean, maybe like, a 6-year-old.
Feels like we don't know our audience, you know, we could have anybody. And so obviously with all these different life changes and moving states and jobs, and I know you had kids and stuff. Like, what kind of, was there any fearful times for you in those situations? Because I know obviously you had 2 more kids since I've seen you last, and I can't imagine the change.
Man, there's some real life moment fears in that. So really, I'll talk about one that we experienced well, both of them are personal, but one that we experienced with our child, and the one that happened actually right before that we experienced professionally. So the first one, which is the second one to happen, that I'll talk about is the process of moving here. All right. So there's a moment that we moved here, and we got to Colorado. Ashley was 8 months pregnant when we drove from Atlanta in Georgia across the country. Like it took us like 4 days to drive here. And we kind of took it slow, but we drove across the country to Colorado. She's 8 months pregnant. In fact, we purposely went through Texas just because the other way we would have had to gone through Oklahoma, and we didn't want a baby born in Oklahoma just in case. But we get here. I'm starting a new job. We're living in an Airbnb for a month before our house is ready that we're purchasing. Mm-hmm. And while we're living in an Airbnb, 10 days after we cross the border into Colorado, Ashley goes into labor. The baby, Juliet, comes early. Mm. And when she's born, she she can't breathe very well. You know, we're at a higher altitude here. We're about a mile higher, just straight up than we were where we lived in Georgia. And so with that, you know, this baby's born premature, like really early. I really don't even think it was 8 months yet. I think it was like 7.5 months. And she's born early. We're at a brand new place. She's in the neonatal intensive care unit, and which is where they put like really sick babies, and can't breathe on her own. Like she has to have oxygen. She has to have help breathing. It's just terrifying, right? With all of our world seemed to be shaken up all at once. You know, now we have this baby, and I remember going up and just sitting next to her in the hospital, and they wouldn't let us. They told us, you know, you can be here whenever you want to, but you can't like sleep here, because if something happens, we need to get in quick. You know, we don't need a sleeping person in the way. So I remember I would just, even late at night, I would just go and sit up next to her, and I would hold her hand. I would pray. And, you know, we had the reassurance of the doctor along the way. No, she's going to be okay. She's going to be okay. She's going to be okay. But to look at your newborn baby, knowing that, right, the other kids didn't go through this, right? The other kids didn't have to have this. Without these machines, she's not okay. When we first checked in, they said, look, we don't know how long she's going to be here. It's probably could be a few weeks. And not knowing like, hey, we're going to get to leave. And I remember like the culmination of it all, it was Mother's Day. And Mother's Day for us is a little bit later, I think, than Mother's Day for you guys. And so it was Mother's Day, and Ashley got discharged from the hospital on Mother's Day, and she had to go home without the baby. And I remember just the hurt that she dealt with, as well as, you know, me trying to comfort my wife, but also being terrified for my little girl. Like it just was something that was overwhelming. And if it wasn't for our faith and the community that we surrounded, like even just beginning, like, right, we didn't know these people that well, but they just surrounded us in love. That it was the affirmation that love conquers fear, and that what we're insecure in our fear, we can have security in with love. And just the reminder of that, both from what we felt from the Holy Spirit, but also what we felt with people around us, was huge for us.
That's so good. So praying and community was big for you then at that time.
Yeah, it was. And really, the interesting thing about this is it comes at the tail end of another experience, which was, and I don't want to say the fear was greater. The fear is still scary, but a very different situation that we were dealing with. And through both of them, we saw that the people we surrounded ourselves with, like you said, that community was vitally important for us, right? We weren't created to live life alone. I mean, even when God created Eve, he looked at Adam and said, hey, it's not good for man to be alone. And while we use that verse to talk about, you know, marriages and husbands and wives often, that's not exclusively about marriage. I think it applies, but I think it also just applies to you as an individual and me as an individual. We weren't made to live in isolation. And it's hard right now because not living in isolation is a lot more difficult when we are by ourselves, Zooming, right? And the reason why it feels so bad is because that's not how we were wired. Even introverts need to interact with other people. And so when scripture says you're not meant to live alone, it means you're not meant to be alone. You are created to interact with other human beings and be in relationship with other human beings. And the crazy thing is, like I said, like when we can focus in on what that love does, it conquers the fear that we may be in. And that's why so often fear and loneliness go hand in hand, right? Have you ever noticed that? Like if you're by yourself, it's dark outside, and you maybe have to go out to the shed or something behind the house and get something. Like it is significantly scarier at night and when you're by yourself. It's why, like, you're always like, hey, you want to go with me? Like we can go together.
Oh man.
Right. It's why my child, when he's terrified at night because he had a bad dream, comes to my room and wants to climb into my bed. It's because he's scared to be by himself. Fear and isolation go hand in hand, and love and community also go hand in hand. The other story I'll share about this, that in my experience over the last couple of years, was actually how I came to be at my position in Colorado. You know, for some time we felt the importance that God was calling us not just out of student ministry, but specifically into the position for a lead pastor. And With that, we accepted a position in Georgia. We moved to Georgia to work with adults specifically, so I could kind of grow in my understanding of adult ministry before I stepped into the role of lead pastor. So we knew that we weren't going to be in Georgia long, right? And so about a year and a half in, we really are starting to feel this press from the Holy Spirit that we need to be looking for this position, right? This calling of lead pastor that God put on my life. And so we start looking at these, for positions, and for 6 months, it was nothing. I mean, I would remember I would go into work and I would fill out a job application at the beginning of the day and I wouldn't hear anything. And I'm praying about it. And I remember there's even a conversation I'm having with my dad, or I'm going like, look, like, Dad, it's never going to happen. No one will even look at my resume. Yeah. And my dad, he's encouraging because he's my dad. But I remember at that day, I have that conversation with my dad when I'm leaving for lunch. When I come back, I have an email in my inbox telling me I'm a finalist for a position or lead pastor at Lighthouse Church in Parker, Colorado. And I'm like, oh, wow.
What happened?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Within 2 weeks, I become a finalist for 3 other positions. So now in the span of 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, really, I'm now looking at a position at 4 different lead pastor roles. One in Georgia, one in Colorado, one in Texas, and then one in South Carolina. And they want to interview me, and they wanting me to come out and bring Ashley.
Yeah.
So at this point, I remember I'm to the point I have to communicate with my current position, like, hey, I'm interviewing, I'm having these conversations. Mm-hmm. And I remember the response I got isn't one that I was necessarily looking for. I can understand it organizationally from their point of view, but it's not what I was looking for. And they said, okay, the response they said is, look, since it looks like you're not going to be here, we're going to go ahead and post your job today. And I said, what? Right. And it was the realization that no matter if I got one of these 4 jobs or not, I was out of a job at my current job. And, I don't want to get into the details on the agreement or disagreement that I had with that position. So I remember pacing outside the back of this church being terrified because I didn't know what I was going to do. I have a wife that is pregnant, right? She's 7 or 6 at this point, 6 months pregnant with Juliet. I have a mortgage to pay. I've got my 3 other my boys to take care of too. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I remember being terrified and overwhelmed and into this moment of fear and questioning. And I remember that I was looking at the story in scripture of Peter walking on the water. So Peter, is this moment where Peter and the disciples are in the boat. It's a crazy storm. They look out and they see Jesus. And Jesus is walking on the water and they think he's a ghost.
Yeah.
And they get this affirmation that it's Jesus. And Peter makes this statement, right? He says, Lord, if it's really you, have me come out to you. And Jesus is like, come on, let's go. Get out of the boat and walk to me. And so Peter, in a step of faith, steps out of the boat to walk on something that he physically should not be able to walk on. Yeah. And starts walking towards Jesus. And Peter now is experiencing the miraculous in his own life as he is walking towards God. His faith in Jesus is what is allowing him to walk on the water. But then in the story, what happens, right? The waves start getting big. Peter starts looking at the waves, takes his eyes off Jesus, and he starts to sink. In this, we have this, Jesus affirming Peter, saving Peter, and getting Peter back into the boat. Yeah. And we can talk about this, and we can talk about the importance of faith. But when we look at this story, this is what rang true for me in my life in this moment: is that when the waves get big, Jesus is still there. Yeah. Just because the waves were getting big doesn't mean Jesus wasn't still standing before Peter.
Yeah, he's still there.
So when the waves of fear in our lives get so big that we can't see past them, a wave may be blocking our view of Jesus, but Jesus is still there.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's our faith in Jesus that moves us past those big waves and those big moments of fear that we deal with. And sometimes that fear is crippling. Yeah. I don't know about you, but there are times that I'm so overwhelmed with fear that I don't know what to do. Yeah. And it even stops me from doing anything. But again, it's that affirmation: when the waves get big, Jesus is still there.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. I like that a lot. And, obviously, people who are watching this may not be moving across the country, or they may not, have problems with family or whatever, but it could be just lockdown right now. That's a big fear in their lives, and depression or school or college or stuff like that. And so, yeah, what would you say to them? What would be your big piece of advice?
I would say the message doesn't change, right? The scale of the fear may change, but here's the thing: when you experience fear, it's not like, oh, well, I'm just, a tiny bit scared. Like, it doesn't care how big the impression is. Sometimes those exams can be crippling, and you don't know what you're going to do. You're terrified you're not going to pass them. Sometimes the situation your parents are dealing with and that is affecting you, even though it's not your situation, is terrifying to you. And it may not be your fear that you're possessing, maybe somebody else's. Maybe it's something, that seems small, like, I know in 2 months we're not going to be locked down again, but right now I'm just scared to be by myself, right? In the moment, that fear seems big. And so even if it's not a grand life-altering fear doesn't scale like we want it to. It's still overwhelming at times. And I would say, no matter how big or no matter how small, the application's still the same. When the waves get big, Jesus is still there. And it's these two concepts, right? You weren't created to be alone, right? You were created to live in community, and faith in Jesus moves us past the fear of what we think is impossible. And really, when we can walk in these together, right, and we have Christ-centered community, even if that is shooting a text message when we're experiencing that and asking somebody to pray for us, even if it is going, hey, can we just FaceTime? Like, I'm really overwhelmed with everything right now, and I just need to talk it through with somebody. Right? Regardless of the situation, I think scripturally we see this in Genesis and in the New Testament with you're not created to live alone. And when we put our faith and keep our eyes focused on faith in Jesus, we move past the externals in the world that want to cripple us from living a life of faith.
Good. Yeah, I like that a lot. Like you were saying, just stick it on a poster. The waves might get big or whatever, they may change, but Jesus is still there. Hook it in, hook it into my vein. Yeah, no, that's so good. Like, because obviously, like, there's a lot of seasonal things right now, like you were saying, with lockdown and exams and stuff, and that stuff passes, that kind of way. But it's how we live in the moment, that kind of way. I can go through this lockdown terrified, or I can, like you say, reach out to somebody. I can read my Bible, I can pray, and really just alter my mindset there. And how I kind of deal with it. So yeah, I like that a lot.
There's also this idea that fear is also like associated with the unknown, right? We don't know what's going to happen. We're scared because we don't know what the results of our exams are going to be, or we're scared because we don't know when lockdown's going to end, or if we're going to have to lock down a third time now, right? Right? And so there's this unknown thing, but here's the thing, right? We worship a God that knows all. He talks about us, like all days ordained for us were written in his book before one of them came to be. This may be a surprise for us, but this is not a surprise for God. So we may not know the conclusion of our fear, but God does. And it doesn't change his commitment to us. And in turn, it should affirm our commitment to Jesus.
True. That's good. That's good. I like it a lot. Any closing final words or inspo or anything like that for anybody else?
I should totally take a youth ski trip to Colorado. You just come on, we got mountains, you can ski down them. We can hang out.
Sign me up.
It'd be good.
Anybody across the interweb watching this? Yeah. Just
open. I mean, I'm not paying for anybody. You just gotta come. We can hang out while you're here. I'll buy coffee.
Perfect. Deal. Well, listen, thanks so much for coming on and chatting to us and being involved, even if it's online. And we're definitely want to have you here in person soon. So we'll be. Yeah,
the plan is to get there as soon as I can. So we'll see. Maybe 2021.
Yeah, 2021, baby. Let's go.
What is up, Elevate Conference? What a great word by Joel. I've been honored to get to know Joel. We were in middle school together, high school together, we went to college together, we were roommates, we were in each other's weddings. We've done ministry together, and we've traveled to Ireland together. And every single time I've gotten to sit and listen to him teach, I always leave encouraged and challenged and wanting to be more like Jesus. So I'm honored that I get to follow Joel here in a little while. 8 o'clock tonight, we want you back here. I'm going to get to talk about fear and what does it look like for fear to not be the thing that defines us. I'm going to start with a story that I promise you're going to want to listen to. So jump on right at 8 o'clock. It is one of the dumber things that I have done as an adult. And so be here right at 8 o'clock. Jump in the comment section. Leave any thoughts that you have. We're so glad that you are a part of this conference.